young lady?
Paul Harry, Nashville.
Okay, thank you. So, Critic, you gotta tell us what you want. You ready? Okay. Good morning. So this morning, as representatives from the GUYSUCO headquarters, we came to visit the iFlood factory in particular because we were advised of some issues that the factory was having. I am extremely happy to be here as the new Chief Executive Officer. The reason this was so important was GUYSUCO is at a unique time in its life. You know, one of the things we've seen is that once a family falls into poverty, it becomes a struggle to rise again. And when we walk along Rose Hall, in particular Kanji area, some places on the East Coast, we can see that manifest poverty because of the decision to close 3 of the factories a few years ago. So, you know, as some of you would know, Skeldon, Rose Hall, and Enmore were closed. But the government of Guyana has made a commitment to reopen these 3 estates. And only yesterday, His Excellency, the President, Dr. Fanali, was in the papers, talking about the importance of this strategy of reopening the 3 estates. And GUYSUCO by itself is now being converted from a 3 factory company to a 6-factory company in this year. So the problem that we see a lot of people making a mistake with GUYSUCO is that they look at GUYSUCO financially, cash inflow versus cash outflow. But they do not measure GUYSUCO economically. And there's a fundamental difference to that. Let me explain. A soap trader, any trader for example, you buy soap at $100, you sell it at $150, you get a $50 profit, and you're happy. But a soap trader doesn't worry about the drainage system around him, the state of the youths in the community around him. They don't worry about what's going on with the other private sector agencies around him. But GUYSUCO has a bigger role. GUYSUCO is saddled with that bigger responsibility of making sure that in addition to producing sugar, it is also saddled with some costs such as GUYSUCO does major drainage and irrigation intervention in rural Demerara and rural Berbice, costing billions of dollars. This all factors into the cost of producing sugar. GUYSUCO also is one of the places that are doing massive training. Next year we're going to be training 100 young people at the Fort Moran Training Center to help them to be equipped to help GUYSUCO, but also to help Guyana as a broader society. Think about the soap trader. He doesn't have to worry about the road, fixing the dam, and all these things. In places like Albion and iFlood and wherever GUYSUCO exists in rural Demerara Berbice, they're actively involved in fixing these things with GUYSUCO resources. So there's a fundamental difference between the financial aspect of an organization and treating it economically. One of it is just inflows and outflows. The other one is inflows, outflows, plus all the social responsibilities that GUYSUCO is saddled with. So when sometimes people make the mistake of claiming that GUYSUCO is getting all these support from government, they have to understand this support comes in the form of compensating for the additional services that GUYSUCO does for this country. You know, there was one point in time when GUYSUCO was considered a country within a country because it did everything for the communities that it were operated in. So we have to be very cognizant of this fact. So I'm asking everyone to make sure that this message gets out. that when people are objecting to GUYSUCO getting support from the state, they must also be fair to understand the billions that GUYSUCO also give to the communities and the people that live in these communities by repairing the drains, repairing the DNI systems, by repairing the dams, helping out communities in many shapes and forms. These things are happening. So having given that pertinent context, I want to get down to the nitty-gritty now. And the nitty-gritty is, what do we do now? His Excellency the President has issued a marching order that he wants 3 sugar estates to be reopened, to join the 3 operating estates. And we have to establish clearly in our mind what we know and what we do not know, and where we want to go. So first of all, I want to tell everybody, GUYSUCO is building a business plan. We're going to try our best to run GUYSUCO as a business, but again, we have to understand GUYSUCO has a bigger responsibility to this country than just being a business. It is a social institution also. So while we're going to try our best to focus on business, we also have to ensure that people understand we do more. So 3 years ago, GUYSUCO left 7 functional estates, and it provided bread and butter to over 15,000 families across Guyana directly, and I was told over 60,000 families indirectly. This was what was happening 3 years ago. There's no other institution in this country that is supporting such a vast network of families. But of course, a decision was made, 3 estates were closed, and we're now reopening it. And I want to tell you what we know. When we opened the gates, when we went to Rose Hall, when we went to Skeldon, when we went to Edmore, we met 3 factories that were idle 3 years ago. We met 3 factories, which by itself, we got to understand, by those things sitting there for so many years idle, there's some intrinsic engineering challenges that GUYSUCO has to take control of to get them rolling again. I mean, even this factory here at Typhoon, even though it's an active factory, when I walked that floor, I heard from the engineering people how much engineering challenges they have. Compressors, pumps, all these things are struggling. Crystallizer plates missing. There's lots of issues, and this is an active factory. Can you imagine what is happening to 3 factories that were sitting there idle for 3 years? The engineers are now going in to start unearthing what is really there. We know the superstructure is there. We know the big elements are there, but they will need a lot of investment to make them going. So there's tremendous intrinsic engineering harm that was done to those 3 factories by just having them sitting idle. So what actions have we've taken so far after going in to these 3 areas? We're starting the engineering investigations. We've done it at Skeldon, we've done it at Rose Hall, we've done it at Edmore. But at the same time, we cannot forget as a company that we have 3 functional factories and 3 functional estates. At the same time, we have to make sure that due care and attention is given to that. So we also, when we opened our gate, we met thousands of hectares of abandoned field, totally abandoned field. Many of those fields are invaded by wild bush right now. And it is a tremendous task to go back now to clear these land. So we have to commence clearing, then we have to start tilling. And incrementally, because the model that GUYSUCO traditionally have was 20% every year they were going to till until the full cultivation is tilled in 5 years. So we're going back to basics here. The basics is this: 20% every year you till until you have, every 5 years you have your cultivation fully tilled. Then you do 1 more cycle, and then you do traditionally some sort of flood following to rest the land a little bit. And then you start that 10-year cycle again. So we have to start this process, but what is happening is that we have to do much more land clearing than we ever thought we would have had. Because it's been infested, and this mini forest has even started to develop in some of these areas. I saw with my own eyes at Rose Hall, mini forest. So this is our commitment. This year, 2020, we're going to clear until about 500 hectares of land in the 3 new estates, as we call them. Skeldon, Rose Hall, and Edmore. And we're going to continue that task again next year and again, and continue until we can get the full 100% going. But we're going to do it aggressively next year, more aggressively. This year we only had a short window, but next year we'll have the whole year, so we'll work much harder within the dry season to get it done. But what this task requires is heavy-duty machinery. And when we opened those gates in those 3 estates again, what did we find with regards to machinery? GUYSUCO left dozens of pieces of working, functional machinery on those 3 estates. What did we find? If we found 2 tractors that you can turn and start, we found a lot. This is the challenge. So the challenge is that we left functional equipment, given it to NISIL, but so far we've found totally abandoned fleet. And many, many parts were missing. Most of them are either sold, disappeared, left to rot. You go to Skeldon, I can show you pictures. It's a graveyard, and a machinery graveyard. 3 years. This is the challenge. So we have to reopen these gates, and we have to do something about this. Now, we've thought out of the box, and we've started to hire some contractors. But at the end of the day, there's a big challenge. Contractors generally don't have the size of tractors that is needed to till. To till, you need like 200 horsepower tractors, and all the engineering guys will tell you that. You need the big, big monster tractors, because between 185 and 200, because you have to go down 18 inches. I mean, all the cane farmers will tell you, you have to go deeper than infant's rice. So it's not a normal tractor you need. So this is the challenge. So not so many of these big tractors are available for rentals. But we try. And we know of cases, my engineering people have advised me, if you put the smaller tractor, they have evidence where it was bursted in half. You ever heard of a tractor bursting in half? It happened in GUYSUCO, because the wrong tractor was used for tilling. So we have to get the right tractor for tilling. Now, so we know where we are, and we know where we want to go. So we're grateful to His Excellency the President of the Government here for committing the funds to helping GUYSUCO reopen these estates, and also to do critical capital repairs to the current and existing factories. So $3 billion was set aside in the budget, this last budget here, and we were told that it's now approved. It's now going to be signed sometime next week into law, and we're going to apply for it and start drawing down and accelerating this intervention. 2.2 billion of that will be going to the 3 new estates, if I may use those words. In the industry, we call them the vested estates. But the 3 vested estates, which is Skeldon, Rose Hall, and Enmore, will be getting 2.2 billion, and the current operating estates will get 0.8 of a billion, to help them from now to, I would say, the end of January to get a lot of their work going. Because the way the system works, the season, the second crop will end about the first week of December, right, Mr. Mada? About the first week of December. So then they rush into that period between December to the end of January to get all the repairs done. So we have to get all the parts, the boat, and all the material for the field to get those things done before we start the first crop next year. So this is all a timing issue. And this is the challenge. We got to make sure we program manage everything to get it done by the time the first crop starts. So this industry was starved of cash over the last few years, and it did have an impact on production, productivity, but this is not about talking about the past. The vision is to talk about where we are, where we want to go, and what we're going to do about it. So we're thanking the government of Guyana for putting $3 billion at GUYSUCO's disposal to help us to move forward. So what we're doing right now is building a business plan, but also we're working assiduously within the industry to start to design an outcome to bring greater efficiencies to the industry. Now, there's two things that I want to focus on as CEO of GUYSUCO. One, we're looking at the entire value chain, and we're looking at see where value is added and where there's non-value added activity. We're going to make non-value added activity in the industry an enemy. So we're going to review all of the non-value added activity and take measures such as our procurement. Is our procurement system working in the best interest of GUYSUCO? If the answer is no, how can we make it better? How can we bring down the unit costs in our purchasing of products? Do we bulk up so we can get it cheaper? These are all the things we're working on. But the bottom line is you've got to have a business plan to know where you want to be in 5 years' time. And that's what we're making sure we develop that so that we can develop an industry that is most efficient. Now, but what is very, very important to us as a state-owned corporation and to our shareholders, and the shareholders of GUYSUCO is the government of Guyana and the people of Guyana. And what is important to them is that we put people back to work. And that is one of the underlying principles of this entire move to reopen estates. To get our people back to work so that they can return to a life of greater dignity. Because when you walk in places like Kanji, you see real life depression. That is not where we want our people to be. Our Guyanese people have to be able to move up the value chain in their own personal lives. And that's what GUYSUCO is about. It's big about lifting all boats, but at the same time, making sure that we're not wasting money. So I want to give you another example that I found at Rosal. At Rosal, we met vital equipment rotting. And for example, there were things like about several tons of fertilizer left on the mud. Albion desperately needed these things years ago, last year and the year before. Never given to us. A functional estate. As you will all know, anybody who's done any science would know, you put fertilizer on mud, after a while it degrades. It's useless. And that's the problem. So these things were allowed to degrade. These are the kind of things that happen. But we're going to move on from that. We're going to work collaboratively to drive great efficiencies across the sugar belt. Now, the last thing that I found is that it's very, very important. This is extremely important. My job as CEO would have been impossible if I didn't have this ingredient in the industry. I found as CEO a multitude, because I've visited 3 estates now, well actually not 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And what I found a multitude of talent, human beings, who has a love for the sugar industry. And at all levels. So it's not just at the engineering level and agricultural level. We're talking about all levels. People are in love with this industry. They've given their life. I've talked to all people on this factory floor. I've not heard anybody told me, oh, just come on. People have here for decades. This is their second home, these sugar estates and sugar factories. So I found people who are committed to the turning around and stabilizing of sugar in this country. And that is very, very important to me because the project becomes possible now that we know we have that asset in GUYSUCO. So I want to thank you all, the sugar workers in particular, and the union for collaborating with us, because without the workers, we couldn't do this. And the workers are very, very critical to making the impossible very possible. On that note, I want to say I thank the media for coming this way, and thanking all of the workers for standing by GUYSUCO in its difficult moments. I can commit that I will work hard with you, for you, and for Guyana to make sure that we can stabilize this industry as soon as possible. So I'm open for questions if anybody has it. Lakram.
Mr. Singh, you would have spoken about the reopening of visas too, but do you have a timeline for actual work to commence in these factories? And we've also seen reports of vacancies at the Rose Hall estate, to be particular. What I want to know is if what's the plan going ahead with these with the reopening of these closed factories? You would have mentioned tilling and clearing the land and so on, but what's the financial plan? And how do we return the sugar industry to profitable industry?
Very, very good question, Lakram. GUYSUCO has to move up the value chain. It's a two-pronged process. Revenue stream has to go up, and the only way we can get revenue stream up is to moving up to higher value sugar-related products. So, for example, GUYSUCO has in its possession a feasibility study on a refinery, a white sugar refinery. That immediately something on a serious consideration now by the administration. Packaging sugar, we have to go more into packaging sugar. We get greater value. We can get packaging sugar as high as $700 a ton. When we sell sugar on the bulk sugar market, we get hundreds of dollars, almost $300 less than that. So we're moving everything up the value chain. So the revenue side will be focused on around that. So bulk sugar, packaged sugar, a refinery is a big focus. But you heard the president talk about partnership with the private sector. You know, whether they want to come into partnership in a distillery in those areas. So these are the vision. On the revenue side, we want to push them. And I said on the cost side, we want to look at all the costs. And we're doing we call an intrinsic forensic deep dive into all the cost elements in GUYSUCO to find out where this money is going, so that we can trap those elements that are going for things that are not adding value to GUYSUCO. So while we're pushing up revenue, we're pulling down expenses. And we're doing the modeling to make sure that that we can make this industry a going concern, which is the mandate that the president has offered to us. He said, you guys got to make this place a going concern. So that's one of the most important things with our plan. We are working hard to get those all grinding by the first crop of 2022. And 2022 will be a big year in the life of GUYSUCO. A big, big year in the life of GUYSUCO. It will be the year where the whole industry will shift in a direction whereby, because some of these challenges that we face are so deep because of what happened over the last 2 years. We got to recapitalize, both factory and field. But the good news I heard from Rosal today, they started clearing the land today for planting of cane. That's a big, big important step, because once that cane is planted, an entire project plan is developed, because it means that from planting of cane, a factory has to receive it. You can't plant cane and leave it in the ground, you have to grind it. So it kicks off immediately a plan to start revitalizing the factory, to receive those canes, to start producing sugar. So clearly Rosal seems to be the one who's pushing ahead fastest, and that's important because they had an advantage, and I'll tell you what the advantage they had. There were canes left on Rosal that Albion was grinding for them, so they're gonna start using that as a kickstart. While when we went to places like Enmore, totally empty. Skellon, you know, they were so bush infested And I think they were wild animals almost living in some of these. Tigers and stuff might have been, well, not tigers, you know what you call it, tiger cat might be living in these things. So the reality is 2022 will be a fundamentally big year in our plan.
Mr. Singh, Guyanese critic, what Guyanese really want to know is you've outlined timelines which you'll be doing things, clearing fields and these kind of things. Guyanese want to know when they will be getting back to work and how much of them. You said 15,000 people lost their jobs.
No. 50,000 used to be in the industry, but I think so.
How much people lost their jobs as a result of closure of the 3 estates for the last 3 years?
About between 6 to 6,500 persons lost their jobs.
Since these estates are going to be doing works to reopen back and get on track, how much of them will be hired from now to 2022?
Well,
rehired?
You know the situation with the Wales estate. That is not coming to GUYSUCO, but the government again have a different plan for the Wales area under something called the Wales Development Authority. But with the 3 estates, I can tell you now, according to the work plan we have, 442 people will be hired back by Christmas of this year, which is a matter of 11 weeks away. They've all actually already hired about 200 of those people already on the books. But they're incrementally hiring as the work expands. Because we're doing it as a business now. We're not just going out and hire. We hire as need. We are also asking contractors to help in this interim because we don't have equipment, as we said. There's no tilling tractors in the system to facilitate the new estates that are coming in. So, with regards to the full measure, when the project is up and running by 2023, 2024, when it's fully functional at 100%, I don't think we'll ever go back to the 6,000, 6,500. But clearly, it will be more than 3,000 people will be back in the industry when it's fully running.
Would not getting back to the 6,000 be because of the intention is for GUYSUCO to have a more lean operation?
The commitment what GUYSUCO is doing right now is every year GUYSUCO has a program plan where they're mechanizing a piece of the field every year. And more as they know, is about 80% mechanized at this point in time. Albion is actively mechanizing. I saw the mechanized field in action at Albion. It produces more cane, it requires less human intervention, and the productivity is higher. So, and so it's back-breaking work. So, I mean, the point is you got to plan all the time to make sure that GUYSUCO is going with the social evolution that is happening in the area. So, no, it will not be the 6,000, 6,500.
Why I ask, Mr. Singh, this has heavily been sold as a savior for the people who lost their jobs. Hence, will GUYSUCO be doing anything to ensure that the job creation for these sick, because they have them, they know them, they've been working for a period of time, will GUYSUCO take into consideration retraining some people, even if they can't rehire them? Help them with some form of training that they could go on and better their lives, because this is being sold as the savior for the people coming back, drainage irrigation, very important, and creating jobs for the people. So the people want to know who will be hired, when they will be hired, and more specifically, if we're going to be looking at the same people, first and foremost, who would have lost their jobs.
Well, let me answer the last question first. Ex-GUYSUCO workers are being given a priority to come back in. The problem, when the others would have walked into the factory, and in the fields, the people who operated GUYSUCO are highly skilled people. So those who've been let go, you don't have to retrain them, they already know their business. So we will be giving priority to ex-GUYSUCO workers, that's one. But two, because of the efficiencies that are coming into flow, this is why we will not be able to go back to that 6,500 level. But most importantly, a lot of people have evolved in their own right into new fields of work, especially in the far end of Guyana, in the border areas, skeleton areas, people are migrants and they go to Suriname and work. They work here. They change industry. These things are happening. What I did see though is in Rosal area, Kanji area, a lot of people still depending on the sugar industry. So I'm happy that that was the first one that got pushed off, and got pushed off really fast, because as I said to you, by Christmas of this year, 442 employees will be back on the force, and it will keep growing every year as the expansion keep growing. Now, as you know, cane, you have to plant the cane first, then harvest it before you can actually grind it. So most of the focus right now on the plant is to get the land occupied and planted. And we're making sure that we have enough planting material. So there's all kinds of limitations, but we're pushing them. There's equipment limitations. We're going out to the market to see how much we can hire and rent from the private sector. There is planting material limitations. We're trying to explore opportunities to see if we can bring them from other societies, Brazil in particular. It's always on the minds of the thinkers. And we're trying to make sure we do it within the rule of the law, because you don't, in the agricultural world, you don't just move things around. You have to follow certain protocols, or you don't want to destroy the strains and so forth. So we are hiring, and I can tell you more people are already on the job today than they were in July of this year.
One more question, Mr. Singh. I know you've just been the CEO for a short period of time. Have you been able to do an assessment as to what kind of damage has been done to GUYSUCO as a result of its closure? I'm talking in terms of cost. You have seen the cemeteries of vehicles and all these kind of things. There has to be a cost to this.
We're working right now with NISL in establishing what we call the handover register. So we know what we gave 3 years ago, and we're trying to establish now what we're receiving. And the gap between that we will establish in the near future to find out how much assets were lost.
Mr. Singh, moving back to the production aspect of things, there have been reports from what we were seeing that it used to be a 10 tons of cane to produce 1 ton of sugar, right? That has increased by approximately 4 times that amount. So what is the reason for this drastic increase, and how are we addressing it? Also, I think it was last week or a few weeks back, we've seen workers from this SINGH estate going on strike for a number of issues, and among that was the fact that the cane coming in was too much mud, to put it. And how we rectifying these issues, and all the other issues that they went on strike for, have those been addressed, or how will we address it, so that we wouldn't have such a reoccurrence of strike that disrupts the operation?
Well, I want to make, first, I'll ask the estate manager to answer the bulk of the question. But there are 2 things I want to make sure I'm clear. I want to appeal to the workers to understand the dire poverty that I've seen in places like Kanji because of the closure of estate. So I'm asking everyone, all workers, all unions, what class of workers you are, factory field, office workers. As the CEO of GUYSUCO, I'm asking you all to give us a fair break. This is the most difficult time for GUYSUCO in its history. I saw an article coming out in the papers where the union said this year is going to be the worst production in the history of Guyana, or the last 50 years of Guyana. And there's a fair bit of truth in those matters. My appeal to the workers is, let us all reach out to make sure we save sugar by giving a little bit more. Because if we fail this time, we are in big trouble. We have two things working for us. One, we have a strong talent base of people, and we have a government that is committed to helping us, but there's only so much they can help. The value add has to come from the way we run this industry. And we all are stakeholders in whether GUYSUCO does well or does not. So if there's an intention to strike, I want people to mediate a little bit more, talk to their seniors a bit more, talk to their unions. Don't, make sure that there's more collaboration as we all try a bit more to save this industry. But notwithstanding that, there's another thing is, you said 10 tons came to 1 ton sugar it was, and you said 4 times, but not 4 times. It moved to about 15. So 10 tons came to 1 ton sugar. Today it's about 15 tons came to 1 ton sugar. 15.63 if I want the exact number exactly. But I agree with you. But cane production is a 3-tier process. You have the field, the cultivation, you have the process between burning to the grinding process, and that's actually one of the most important elements in the industry that nobody's talking about. And then you have the factory operation. And there's another element called the logistics to ship it out. But the main cost right now that we'll be losing value is by the time they burn the cane to the time it hit the factory gate. The burn to grind ratio. The reason for this is that there have not been enough investment in the dams, the culverts, the drainage system. So everybody's under pressure across the industry by the time this cane hits the factory gate. And the reason for that, cane is something that loses its sucrose content pretty rapidly. The agriculturist told me 48 hours, right? Within 48 hours, you have material deterioration in the sucrose content. So by the time you burn that cane, within 48 hours, it has to be in the factory gate, ready to be lifted, as you saw, into that one dumper. If it comes beyond that, you're losing money. So everybody's under a bigger push. So I'm asking all the workers. I know that everybody's being asked to do a little bit more, but this is the time for us to all come together and do a bit more, including me. And I'm always available to hear the concerns of the union. The union is sitting on the board, and Mr. Singh is going to be on the board of GUYSUCO as an official member of GAU. He will be there in the highest decision-making body of GAU. He will partake in the decisions. He will speak his mind freely. So this is how committed I believe the administration is to making sure that the workers' voice is represented at the highest level and at all levels. So I'm appealing to the workers to support your leadership a little bit more, and let's make more great sugar. That's what I want. But to the minor matter, the estate-related matters, I'll ask the estate manager to speak about it.
Stephen, good morning, everybody. You would have said quite a lot concerning the strike we would have had. Basically, what we would have seen there is a breakdown in competition to start with one. And I'll say clearly the commitment and dedication of everybody to go forward. We have all known over the last couple of years the input into the factory operations and to make the factory more better. And so what would have happened? For this crop alone, we would have crushed, today is the 40 crushing, we would have had about 204 hours run. You heard about the quality run in quality. Cotton became, and within 48 hours, getting into the factory. What would have basically happened? We would have had a significant amount of downtime, and to manage the cane processing would have been challenging for us. And so what would have happened over the last couple of weeks, you were not able to manage wanting to run an input, causing severe challenges within the process house to manage the juice. It's relatively short time to recover. I think where you are was a little showing the resilience to go forward, because you would have known I had already been challenged with producing cane to read the factory and to maximize on the cane recovery. We were actually having about a 85 to 90 hours run, hours weekly. Here it is, we were moved to 110 average over the last 2 years. And that then basically what would have happened is that the factory would have been walking more. We would have seen failures more frequently than we were accustomed to when we were having 85 to 90 hours of run. Not replacing major companies would have been a major barrier for us, ending up in this problem. Even after companies ago, we ended up in businesses. But from then to now, we have able to manage the situation there. As he rightly said, I asked for commitment, dedication to be a little more. You heard what was about the wheels, then more, and the other experiences. I would have seen from then to now too, better conversation, better dialogue, better understanding of the workforce from that little strike we had then to now. And so what I would basically say, that we would have learned from that experience. And to go forward to the end of the crop, despite we have not have much input in terms of machinery, manual, department, the better understand will take us to the next level. We will do better and confident.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we had a long day.
One question. Actually, I'm curious about what you
Don't worry, you're media man too.
We are here because of our concerns. 2 days ago, we used to take 13 and 14 tons of one ton shoe. 2 days ago, it went up to 21. 21 something, 21.32. This morning came out down to 15 something. We are asking for an explanation. I don't know if you are aware, but cane farmers receive $59,000 a ton for sugar. It costs us $3,000 for reap and transport. We have been doing business now for the past 3 years, not making any money. That is why I guess it's over 50% of the cane farmers going out of business. And it looks like I have to do the same. I've been in sugar for 40 years. I don't like to get out of sugar. I want to know what assurance you guys can give us that we stay in this business. Because we can't be continuing making any money, losing money and stay in business.
I want to speak to this to two areas. One, we're going to bring greater transparency to the relationship. That's one thing will happen under my watch. I agree that we do have some efficiency issues. I came and met, and all the engineering staff will tell you, my focus is clearly on where are we losing money and we should not be losing money. So we are going to attack all the non-value added activities. My vision is to bring down the what you call ton gains to the ton sugar ratio. It's now 15 as you recognize, and the vision is to bring it down next year. This second crop is generally set. What we've done is ask all the estate managers to start harvesting their crop cane and not dwell too much on the carryover cane. So while I can't answer your question to that effect, what I can tell you is that the president has committed to partnership. He's keep using the word partnership in the sugar industry. But two, we are going to look internally towards making the operation more efficient so that the cost of production can come down. So if we can do those things, then your payment, your value that you get, there will be they will be less costly to you. So that's all we're trying to do. But I know this year it's really a challenging year for us.
We making sugar, sugar, this is state, right? They're selling the sugar at 6,000 something a bar. And we are paying 30% for milling costs. That's a fixed cost, for milk and process the tea. We are asking that we get paid for the sugar that we are making, and not the cost of the industry.
Well, this is a new issue you just brought to the table. We have to review everything and see what is the model that is being used. And I would gladly engage the cane farmers subsequently at another time. We'll come to Wales through Paul Chung, I'll let him arrange it. And let's talk through the model and understand the financing. Because I hear everything you say, and I know that there's an issue going on with you. But I can't make an on-the-spot decision because I have to understand what is going on. I have to deconstruct the model and find out what is going on. Then also there's a law, the National Cane Farming Law. So we got to also make sure that we're not violating any law. So these are all things. But fair point that we need to be more efficient. That's what you're saying to me.
Yeah, because we cannot continue, because the banks don't give you a loan to go plant it. Bank will not give you a loan because they won't take a chance. You will take out your capital, put it in here, and you're losing it. Year after year, you're losing more and more and more. Right? And there's no sight of it returning.
Mr. Says.
So that's why so much cane farmers go out of business. They're leaving the cane and go. And it looks to me like all of us will have to go in there if it continues.
Well, that's not our design. We're not trying to push people out. But I'm glad you raised the point, and I'm going to make sure.
But you understand where I'm coming from. If you're doing a business that you can't make money, nobody works for 3 years for no pay.
Mr. Says, on that point, Mr. Cane Farmer, some clarity, just not to misinform the public. You have been working and supplying GUYSUCO with cane for 3 years and have not turned a profit?
That's right, making losses. Right now,
you are into the business of losses, sir.
Can I suggest that how the interview could be done? You can do an interview with the cane farmer separately, but at the moment, the chief executive is conducting
No, this is what happened. What happens? The question that was asked by the cane farmer.
But you have to ask it through the chief executive. You can't ask it to the cane farmer.
No. I'm just for clarity. It's not a question. It's clarity.
Yeah, but I'm just putting an order to how it's done.
I mean, I agree that this is an issue that I'm now hearing about for the first time. So we will address it. We'll have to think through the whole business model. But the question is, these are some of the challenges consumers face. So we have to look at all these things because there's structures to be bought, there's fields to be taken care of, there's factories. We just walked through that factory. There's so many things to be taken care of. So there's many plates spinning. And I hear your issue, and your issue is a very valid issue. So we have to just make sure we look at it carefully within the whole grand scheme of things. So I'm glad you raised the point, and we will look at it. I'll talk, we have a cane farmer specialist at that office. I'll ask him to give me a full briefing on what is the payment model, why this is happening, and then we'll come out to see you. And I'll arrange it through Mr. Paul Chung to come out to see you.
I'll request a cane farming meeting here at ICON instead of videos because most of the farmers are like.
Well, that's a fair point.
And second thing, I planted 400 acres of plantain. I can't get fertilizer. I can't source fertilizer from outside because we don't have. We bought now. And that thing should be reaping next crop.
I know this issue, but Albion also needs. This is the challenge. Because of the financial situation GUYSUCO found itself, even our own cane we didn't get to fertilize because of inadequate fertilizer. So as soon as we get the fertilizer, it goes out and utilized in our field.
Yes,
so there's no excess fertilizer hanging around right now in GUYSUCO. There's none.
Yes, but you can see GUYSUCO fertilizer this week and fertilizer next week. We came for next crop, how much fertilizer? That's not fair. And it's 400 acres of land.
think, I mean, you're saying the other private sector don't have fertilizer. Is it?
Yeah, we wanted Benu, I want.
Amazon and all these places don't have fertilizer.
I bought it from Benu for cash, you gotta pay cash.
You see, this is a commodity, fertilizer, actually, is not normally supposed to.
That was in the act.
That's been doing all the time. I know since last year, not after this year.
Well, because they couldn't afford to buy it. The big challenge is GUYSUCO has not bought enough fertilizer for itself for this year and last year. So the question is, they have none. You can't give what you don't have. And that's the challenge, right?
They found that at those, GUYSUCO was born to supply farmers fertilizer. That's why the payment was laid out.
But what I'm saying to you, even if you're bummed, you can't give what you don't have. You understand? They didn't have, because I know right now I've asked the question, I saw that in the first crop of this year, Albion Estate still has hectares of land that needs fertilizer. So it's a reality. GUYSUCO is really trying now to build up. And this is but the good news is, there's only one way to go from now onwards, is up. Because we've hit rock bottom and we're going on. We're starting to build a business model of basically getting everybody aligned to start chopping costs out and focusing our minds on the value-added activity. And trying to, like one of the plans we're even trying to do is accelerate the reopening of the Enmore packaging plant so we can get more packaged sugar on the market. Even New York needs our packaged sugar, so we're pushing hard in these areas now. And that's one of the reasons why I came to see this, because I wanted to make sure that I could understand that this can go into a package. Because people were telling me that there is no dryer here and so forth, and this sugar cannot go in a package. I am convinced this can sell in New York because this is what the people want. This is exactly what they want. The Guyanese brown. They don't want the lighter brown sugar that is already dried. This is what they're fighting for in the Guyanese community of New York. We have an importer who's committing to buy 3 containers of this kind of sugar every month. If you can get this wetter, darker kind of sugar, this is what he wants. And if we can get this package, we have a deal. So this is the whole idea. We're trying our best to ensure that we can move towards these areas quicker, faster, more efficient, so that there's more money in the industry so we can do some of the things that you're thinking about. But we can't do it without money, because when we send sugar via the sugar bulk in a big boat, and we don't make money.
Another thing, I don't know if you are aware, farm supplies is a big farmer at this location. The people that sell all those machines. And last crop they
They're the what?
They're a cane farmer.
They're cane farmers?
Yeah. And the last crop they get 128 ton cane for 1 ton of sugar. And they just quit. So I don't know if you are aware, I want you to look at that. Because if you keep doing that, as the farmer said, you're going to go up. And they are huge, even though they have all kinds of machines.
All right. So we got to bring this to an end because I know the media has to go back.